Hello, I'm Peter. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. Before we step back in time, give me a moment of your awareness. Feel the comfort around you, the mild air, your body at ease. Your breath flowing without a trace of frost. These solid walls hold the outside world at a safe distance. Hold on to that feeling, because in just a moment, you'll have to let it go. Tonight, we're traveling back to a time when warmth wasn't a birthright, when shelter was provisional, when a family's entire future could be packed into a wooden box on wheels rolling west across a landscape that didn't particularly care whether they survived or not. We're going back to the 1850s, to somewhere on the Oregon Trail, to a moment when the temperature dropped 60 degrees in 3 hours, and the wind came howling out of the north like something with teeth. Before we begin, let go of any ideas about heroes. History is not made of glory alone. There was courage here, and there was will, but at its core was something far simpler and more enduring endurance. The people who survived that fateful night performed no extraordinary acts. They did just one thing: they refused to yield. In the suffocating dark and the bone-deep cold, they held on. They breathed. They waited. Every movement, every thought was managed with perfect precision, because the line between life and death was as thin as a sleep from which you might not wake. Let me paint you a picture of what we're walking into. It's late afternoon in November, maybe 1852, though it could be earlier or later. The exact year matters less than the moment. You're somewhere in what will one day be Wyoming or Nebraska, though those names don't mean much out here. Out here, there are no states, no counties, no property lines or street addresses, just land. Endless rolling prairie that looks the same in every direction, until you start to wonder if you're actually moving at all, or just walking in place while the earth turns beneath you. You've been traveling for months now. Left Missouri in April, when the grass was just starting to green up, when the guidebooks said to leave when the other wagons were forming up into trains for mutual protection. 800 miles behind you, maybe 200 still ahead. Though, honestly, distances out here are more theoretical than actual. A mile when you're fresh and the weather's good is very different from a mile when you're exhausted and a storm is coming. The wagon you're traveling in, let me tell you what it really was. Not the romantic canvas-covered vessel you've seen in paintings, families waving cheerfully from the back while golden light makes everything glow with promise. No, what you're riding in is a freight hauler, a cargo vehicle designed to move goods, not people. Picture a wooden box, maybe 12 feet long and 4 feet wide, built from oak planks and held together with iron bolts. The floor is rough-hewn boards that flex and creak with every rut in the trail. The sides are maybe 3 feet high, topped with curved wooden ribs that support the canvas cover. That canvas, it's not cozy. It's utilitarian. Heavy cotton duck fabric treated with linseed oil and pine tar to make it somewhat water-resistant. Somewhat. The treatment helps, but it also makes the canvas stiff and crackling. And in cold weather, it gets brittle, developing cracks where water can seep through. The whole structure wagon and cover together weighs maybe 1,200 pounds empty. Loaded with your family's entire fortune in goods and supplies, it's pushing 3,000 pounds that 2 oxen have to pull across roadless wilderness. Inside this box, there's barely room to breathe. Every available inch is packed with supplies. Barrels of flour and cornmeal, sacks of beans and rice, salt pork wrapped in burlap, cast iron cookware, tools, seed for planting when you finally reach Oregon, your mother's trunk with the good dishes wrapped in newspaper, your father's carpentry tools, the spinning wheel that's supposed to help your mother earn money in the new territory, books, because your parents believe in education even out here, a small box of precious things, photographs and letters and grandmother's cameo brooch items that have no practical value but matter anyway. What this means is that there's maybe 4 feet of floor space where human beings are actually supposed to exist. 4 feet by 12 feet for sleeping, for living, for surviving. And that's on a good night. Tonight won't be a good night. The signs have been building all day, though you didn't recognize them at first. The sky did something strange around noon. The blue leached out of it, gradually replaced by a yellowish grey that made the light feel wrong, sickly. The wind, which out here never really stops, changed direction. Started coming from the north instead of the west. Started carrying a smell, if cold can have a smell. A sharp metallic scent like iron or ice. The oxen knew first. Animals always do. Buck and Bright, those patient miracles who've pulled your family across 800 miles of nothing. They started getting restless around 2 in the afternoon. Ears twitching, heads low. The pace of their walking changed, became more urgent, like they wanted to be somewhere else, anywhere else, before the sky made good on its threat. Silas noticed next. He's the old man traveling with your group been across this trail twice before, and he's got a way of reading weather that seems almost supernatural. He just stopped walking around 3 o'clock, stood there in the middle of the trail staring north, and said quietly, "We need to stop, right now. Your father wanted to keep going. Of course he did. There's a proper campsite marked on the guidebook map, supposedly only 5 miles ahead, a place with some natural windbreak and good grass for the animals. 5 more miles would put you that much closer to Oregon, that much closer to being done with this whole ordeal." But Silas shook his head. "We stop here, or we don't stop at all. That's not a weather front coming. That's a killer. And if we're still moving when it hits, we won't be moving much longer." There was something in his voice that ended the discussion. Your father gave the command. The wagon stopped right there. No circle of wagons for protection, because you're traveling alone now. The rest of the train having pulled ahead 2 days ago when your wheel needed repair. Just you and Silas, 2 wagons, 4 people, and whatever's coming. That was an hour ago. Now, as the last daylight starts to fail, as the temperature drops with stomach-turning speed, as the first flakes of snow start to materialize out of the darkening air, you're about to climb into that wooden box and try to survive the night. But before we do, I want you to understand what survival meant in this context. It didn't mean being comfortable. It didn't mean sleeping well or staying warm or even avoiding pain. It meant maintaining core body temperature above the point where organs shut down. It meant keeping extremities functional enough that frostbite didn't set in. It meant staying conscious enough to make adjustments, to notice when someone else was in trouble, to keep the vigil that separates living through the night from not living through it. The people who made it, they learned a language most of us will never need to speak. A language made of sensation and attention and tiny adjustments. A language where breathing is a considered act, where position matters, where the difference between life and death can be as simple as whether you remember to keep your feet moving slightly, even while you sleep. Tonight, I'm going to teach you that language. We're going to spend the dark hours together, you and I, inside a covered wagon, while a prairie blizzard tries its best to kill everyone inside. We're going to learn what cold really means, what darkness really feels like. What it takes to endure when enduring is the only option left. The wind is picking up now. The temperature is dropping. And somewhere out there in the gathering dark, the storm is coming closer with every passing second. So if you're comfortable where you are, if you're warm and safe and dry, take a moment to appreciate it. And then, if you're ready, let's step back through time together. Let's climb into that wagon. Let's feel what they felt. Let's understand what survival really costs. Shall we begin? The decision to climb inside the wagon comes with a finality that makes your stomach tight. You've been walking alongside this vehicle for so long that it's become part of the landscape, no more remarkable than the horizon or your own shadow. But stepping inside, pulling that canvas closed behind you, that's different. That's admitting the day is over. That forward motion has stopped. That for the next however many hours, this wooden box is going to be your entire world. Your father goes in first, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who's done this 100 times. Except it's different tonight. You can see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his jaw is clenched. He knows what's coming. He's seen storms before, maybe not this far west, but back in Ohio, and he understands what they can do. He's carrying the soapstones, 3 of them wrapped in burlap and still radiating heat from the fire he managed to coax into existence before the wind made flame impossible. These unremarkable grey rocks, each about the size of a loaf of bread, are suddenly the most valuable objects your family owns. They'll provide the only heat you'll have besides your own bodies. And their warmth is already fading degree by degree, minute by minute. Your mother climbs in next, and she's in that mode you've come to recognize over the months of travel. The mode where her face goes very still and her movements become precise, and she stops talking except when absolutely necessary. She's calculating, running numbers in her head about supplies and warmth and survival that she'll never share aloud, because sharing them would make everyone more afraid. She's carrying Emma, your 9-year-old sister, who's already wearing so many layers of clothing she can barely bend her arms. The child looks like a small fabric-covered barrel, and under any other circumstance, it would be funny. But nobody's laughing. Emma's face is very pale, very serious, and her eyes are wide with the kind of fear that children get when they sense adults are scared but trying to hide it. "Come on," your mother says to you, her voice carefully neutral. "Inside now." We need to get organized before the light goes completely. You climb in, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. Months of living compressed into an enclosed space. The sharp, acrid scent of axle grease. The earthy must of burlap and canvas. The ghost of wood smoke that's soaked into every fabric surface. The sour tang of sweat and unwashed bodies because water's been too precious to waste on bathing. Your mother's lavender sachet, crushed and faded now, but still trying gamely to provide some civilized smell. And underneath all of it, something else. Something that might be fear, or might just be the concentrated scent of human exhaustion. The interior is darker than outside, which is already getting dark fast. The canvas that looked so bright and promising in morning sun becomes a dim filter, turning the failing daylight into something submarine and uncertain. Your eyes need time to adjust to start making out shapes in the gloom. The space feels even smaller than you remember. The barrel of flour taking up one corner. The trunk with the good china wedged against the front. The water barrel still mostly full, thank God, secured against one side. Tools hanging from pegs driven into the wooden ribs. Bags of beans and rice stacked like building blocks. Your sister's rag doll wedged into a crack between crates, one button eye, catching what little light there is and gleaming. Everything is organized with an efficiency born of necessity. Your mother knows where every item is. She could find the coffee tin, or the extra blankets, or the medical supplies in complete darkness if she had to. And tonight, she might have to. Emma, come here to me. Your mother says her hands already pulling out every piece of fabric that might serve as blanket or padding or insulation. The wool blankets, the spare clothes, the piece of canvas that was supposed to be for repairs, but tonight will be for warmth. Even the good tablecloth from the trunk, because survival doesn't care about keeping things nice for special occasions. Your father is still outside, and you can hear him moving around the wagon, his boots crunching in the thin layer of snow that's already accumulating. He's checking everything one last time, making sure the oxen are secured as best they can be, checking the wheel chocks, testing the canvas ties, looking for any weakness in the wagon's structure that might become critical when the storm hits full force. Silas is outside too, and you can hear the two men talking in low, urgent voices. Not the words, just the tone. The sound of men making plans for scenarios they hope won't happen, but need to be ready for anyway. Then Silas appears at the back of your wagon, his weathered face framed by the canvas opening. He's holding something small and metallic, and even in the dim light, you can see it's a brass bell, the kind that might hang on a harness or a shop door, no bigger than your fist. "You folks mind if I add this to your setup?" he asks, though it's not really a question. He's already tying it with a piece of leather cord to one of the support ribs right above where you'll all be lying. It hangs there, swaying slightly with the growing wind, and when it moves, it makes the tiniest sound. Not quite a ring, more like a whisper of metal on air. Your mother looks at it, understanding immediately what it's for. "That's good thinking," she says quietly. Emma reaches up to touch it, making it chime once clearly. The sound is small and pure and completely inadequate to the immensity of what's happening outside. But it's there, a tether, a reminder. A tiny voice that will speak when everything else is silent. When you can't see nothing, Silas explains, though no one asked, when you can't tell which way is up or if the wagon's even still upright, that little bell tells you. It says you're still here, still anchored, still real. He catches your mother's eye and something passes between them. Some understanding that comes from both being the kind of person who plans for worst-case scenarios. I've seen storms bury wagons completely. Silas continues, his voice matter of fact. Seen 'em tip over in wind, seen canvas tear and frames collapse. But most often what kills people is they just forget where they are, get disoriented, panic, try to go outside to check on something and can't find their way back. That bell, it's a lighthouse. Long as you can hear it, you know home is right there. Your father climbs in, then bringing with him a rush of air, so cold it makes everyone gasp. The temperature has dropped at least 20 degrees just in the last hour, and it's still falling. You can feel it. The cold isn't just outside anymore. It started to infiltrate, seeping through every gap in the canvas, every crack between boards, working its way toward your skin with patient determination. Everybody, listen. Your father says, his voice carrying the weight of command. Once we close this up, nobody goes outside unless it's a life or death emergency. I don't care how much you need to piss or how claustrophobic you feel. We stay together. We stay inside. We survive as a unit, or we don't survive at all. He looks at each of you in turn, making sure you understand. Emma nods solemnly. Your mother's face is set. You swallow hard and nod too. Good, he says. Now let's get organized. Duty, your mother has already been arranging the sleeping space with the kind of strategic thinking usually reserved for military campaigns. She's laid the buffalo robe down first, that heavy piece of hide and fur that your father traded a week's worth of supplies for back at Fort Laramie. The trader had assured him it was essential that many families didn't make it over the mountains because they didn't have proper robes, and your father had believed him enough to part with precious resources. Now, touching it in the growing darkness, you can feel why. The fur is thick and oily, smelling of smoke and animal and something wild. The hide side is tough as leather. Between the two surfaces, there's an insulation that no amount of wool blankets could match. This robe has kept buffalo warm in winters, far worse than this one. Now it's going to try to keep you warm. Over the robe, your mother spreads the blankets in careful layers. The heavy wool ones on bottom for insulation from the cold wooden floor. The lighter ones on top for covering. She's creating a nest, a cocoon, a small defended space where body heat can accumulate and maybe be enough. We'll sleep close tonight, she announces, and the way she says it makes clear there will be no discussion. Emma in the middle, then you. She looks at you, then me, then your father on the outside edge. Silas will be in his own space, but nearby. This violates all the careful privacy arrangements you've maintained over months of travel. The way you've used crates and hanging fabric to create separate sleeping areas. The way you've pretended that this shared space could somehow be divided into rooms. But tonight, All of that is abandoned. Tonight, there's only the mathematics of survival. And the math says bodies generate heat. Closeness multiplies it. Space is death. Your father positions the soapstones carefully. One goes at the foot of the makeshift bed, where it can radiate warmth toward feet and legs. One goes in the middle, where hands can reach it, pass it around, share its diminishing heat. The third, he wraps extra carefully and places against the side wall, saving it for later when the others have gone cold. Even through the burlap wrapping, you can feel the heat radiating from the nearest stone. It's almost painfully hot against your cold hands, and you want to just hold onto it, press it against your chest, claim its warmth for yourself. But you know better. That heat has to be rationed, shared, made to last as long as possible. Outside, the wind finds its voice. It starts as a murmur barely noticeable, then builds to something you can't ignore. A low moan that makes the canvas shiver, then higher, sharper, until it's almost a scream. The whole wagon starts to rock slightly, just a few inches, but enough to make the brass bell ring out nervously. Your mother is redistributing cargo, creating a buffer zone between the windward wall and where you'll all be lying. Flour sacks, the heavy toolbox, your father's spare boots filled with sand for extra weight. Anything that can add mass, add insulation, add one more layer between you and the direct assault of the storm. Emma starts to cry very quietly, tears running down her cheeks without sound. Your mother pulls her close immediately, wrapping the child in layers of fabric and arms. Shh, shh, she whispers. It's going to be loud, it's going to be cold, but we're together, and that means we're going to be fine. It's a lie, of course. There's no guarantee you'll be fine. People die in storms like this one, die within yards of shelter, die from cold, or from making one wrong decision, or from simple bad luck. But it's the lie children need to hear, and your mother tells it with such conviction that even you half believe it. Your father is doing one last check of the canvas ties, making sure every corner is secured, every potential weak point reinforced. His hands are already red with cold, fumbling slightly with the knots. When he finally finishes and climbs back into the wagon fully inside, this time his breath is coming in white clouds, so thick they look solid. That's going to get worse. Silas observes from his corner, watching the condensation. Every breath we take adds moisture to the air in here, and moisture is the enemy. It'll make everything damp. Damp wool don't insulate. Damp skin loses heat faster. We need to manage it. How? Your father asks. Carefully, Silas replies. Breathe slow. Breathe into your clothing when you can, and expect that by morning, everything in here is going to be wet or frozen, or both. It's not encouraging information, but it's practical. And practical information, even when it's grim, is better than ignorance. Your mother has started feeding everyone small pieces of salt pork, tough and chewy and unappetizing, even on a good day. Eat it, she insists when Emma makes a face. Every bite. Your body needs the fat. It's fuel. It's what's going to keep you warm through the night. You eat your portion mechanically, barely tasting it. The meat is salty enough to make your mouth dry, and you wash it down with a small swallow of water that's already cold enough to make your teeth ache. But you can feel it hitting your stomach, that weight, that density, and some instinctive part of you recognizes it as necessary, as ammunition for the fight ahead. The taste lingers, salt and fat, and something almost rancid coating your tongue, making your mouth feel thick and dry. You want water to wash it away, but water is rationed precious, and you've already had your small swallow. So the taste stays, clings to your teeth, settles into the back of your throat. A reminder of what survival tastes like when it's stripped of everything except function. There are other smells now that the canvas is sealed and you're all pressed together. Your mother's lavender has long since been overwhelmed. What fills the air instead is earthier, more honest. The wool blankets carry the smell of sheep and lanolin intensified by dampness. Your father's coat smells of wood smoke and sweat, and the iron tang of tools. The buffalo robe beneath you has its own scent, wild and musky, like the animal it came from is still somehow present. And underneath everything barely noticeable, but there is the smell of fear. It's not imaginary. Fear has a scent. It comes off human skin when the body is stressed, when adrenaline floods the system. Sharp, slightly acrid, mixed with the salt of old sweat and the sourness of breath that's been recycling in a closed space for hours. You can taste it too, that fear, metallic on your tongue, like you've been sucking on a copper coin. The light is almost gone now. The grey gloom inside the wagon deepening to something approaching black. Your father lights the small lantern that usually hangs from a hook at the front of the wagon, but after a moment, he blows it out again. We can't risk it, he says to no one in particular. If it tips, if the oil spills, we could have fire, and fire in here would be as deadly as the cold. So darkness it is, complete darkness. The kind you never experience in civilization, where there's always some ambient light, some glow from somewhere. But out here, with the canvas closed, and the lantern out, and the snow falling thick enough to block even starlight, the darkness is absolute. It has weight. It has presence. It presses against your eyes like something solid. You lie down in the nest your mother has created, fitting yourself between Emma and your mother like a puzzle piece. The closeness is immediate and undeniable. You can feel Emma's back against your front. Feel her breathing. Feel the small tremors of fear or cold running through her body. Your mother's arm comes over both of you, and then your father's arm over all three. And suddenly, you're not four separate people anymore. You're one organism, one collective attempt at survival. Silas has positioned himself nearby, wrapped in his own blankets and whatever wisdom decades of frontier life have taught him. You can't see him in the darkness, but you can hear him breathing, can sense his presence as a separate warmth in the cold space. Outside, the wind finds a new pitch. The snow sound changes from a gentle susurration to something more aggressive, harder particles hitting the canvas with force. The temperature continues its remorseless drop, and you can feel it happening degree by degree as the warmth you brought in with you starts to leach away into the night. Your father's voice comes out of the darkness, steady and calm. We're going to get through this, 1 hour at a time, 1 breath at a time. And in the morning, we'll dig out and we'll keep going. Because that's what we do. That's what humans do. We endure. The brass bell rings once as the wagon shifts slightly. Still here, still standing, still alive. And the long night begins in earnest. There's a moment, maybe half an hour into the full darkness, when you realize you're learning to hear in ways you never have before. With sight gone completely, with nothing to see except the absolute black inside the canvas cover, your other senses sharpen with an intensity that's almost painful. Sound becomes everything. Sound becomes your only way of understanding the world, of measuring threat, of maintaining some connection to reality beyond the small space of your own body. The wind is the dominant voice, but you're discovering it's not a single sound. It's a choir, it's an orchestra, it's a conversation in a language you're only beginning to understand. There's the high whistle when the wind hits the curved top of the wagon cover. That's wind over open land, unobstructed prairie, traveling at speeds that could knock a standing person flat. You've heard Silas estimate wind speeds before, based on sound, alone 50 miles per hour, 60-70. Tonight, that whistle is climbing into ranges that might be 80 or 90. Fast enough to scour skin. Fast enough to make breathing difficult if you were exposed to it. Then there's the deeper moan when the wind wraps around the whole structure of the wagon that's wind-carrying weight. Not just air, but snow particles of ice cold made solid and given motion. That sound tells you the storm is strengthening, that whatever you're experiencing now is only the beginning. But the sound you're learning to listen for most carefully is the creak of the wagon itself. The groan of oak planks under stress. The protest of joints where boards meet, held together with iron bolts that are themselves conducting cold into the wood, making everything more brittle, more prone to failure. Your father is listening too. You can tell by the quality of his stillness. He's lying there in the dark, cataloguing every sound, building a mental map of the wagon's structural integrity based purely on audio information. That's normal, he murmurs once when a particularly loud crack makes Emma whimper. Just the wood adjusting to the cold. Oak contracts when it freezes. Sounds worse than it is. But there are other sounds that aren't normal. Sounds that make him tense. A different kind of creaking that suggests stress beyond what the structure was designed for. A flapping sound that might mean canvas coming loose from its ties. A scraping that could be anything or nothing, but needs to be monitored. Silas speaks from his corner, his voice rough but calm. Listen to the rhythm of it. The wind, I mean. It's got a pattern if you pay attention. Gusts come in waves, maybe 30 seconds of building, then 10 seconds of peak, then 20 seconds of relative calm. That's your window. Window for what? Your father asks. For anything you might need to do. Check the canvas ties. Adjust the oxen. Make any movement at all. You don't fight the peak. You can't. But in those calm patches, you can work. You can act. It's information from experience, hard-won knowledge that Silas has gathered over years of surviving conditions that killed other people. And he's sharing it now, because sharing knowledge is how humans survive. We're not strong enough, or fast enough, or well adapted enough to make it alone. But we can talk, we can teach, we can pass along the tricks that work. You start listening for the rhythms Silas described, and after a few minutes, you can hear it. The wind does have a pattern. It builds like an incoming wave, crests with terrifying force, then subsides slightly before building again. In those brief valleys of relative quiet, you can hear other sounds. The brass bell ringing more softly, your own breathing. Emma's small voice asking questions she's not voicing aloud. The snow sounds different now than it did an hour ago. It's not soft anymore, not the gentle accumulation of fluffy flakes you might see in picture books. This is granular, hard, driven by wind into particles that behave more like sand than snow. You can hear it hammering against the canvas in waves, each gust bringing a fresh assault of what sounds like thrown gravel. That's flower snow. Silas explains, apparently also teaching through sound. Means the temperature's dropped below zero. Snow that cold doesn't stick together in flakes anymore, breaks down into individual crystals. Dangerous stuff. Gets into everything. You breathe it, and it's like breathing ground glass. Burns your lungs. The image is terrible enough that no one responds. You're all just processing it, understanding that the world outside this canvas has become actively hostile to human life. That exposure would mean not just discomfort, but injury. Not just cold, but damage. Your mother has begun humming so quietly, you almost don't hear it under the wind. Not a song, really. Just a steady vibration in her chest, where Emma's head is resting. A wordless comfort that predates language, something mammalian and ancient. The vibration says, "I'm here. I'm alive. I'm watching over you, and as long as you can feel this sound, you're safe." Emma's breathing starts to slow to steady, matching the rhythm of your mother's hum. The child is being soothed despite the circumstances, lulled by the oldest magic humans have the simple presence of a parent's body. And then you hear something that makes everyone freeze. It's faint, distant, but unmistakable in the brief valley between wind gusts. Wolves. The howl rises and falls, carried on wind currents that do strange things with sound. It could be miles away, or it could be hundreds of yards. No way to tell. The acoustics of a blizzard make everything deceptive. Emma stiffens against you, her breath catching. Your mother's arm tightens around both of you. Your father's hand moves in the darkness, finding the rifle wrapped in oilcloth, touching it for reassurance, even though he doesn't unwrap it, doesn't load it. But Silas makes a sound that might be a chuckle. "That's just the wind," he says with certainty. Playing tricks, making sounds where there aren't any. Wolves have more sense than we do. They're holed up somewhere warm, waiting this out. "You're sure?" your father asks. "Sure as I can be about anything in a blizzard. Besides, wolves don't hunt in weather like this. Can't track, can't see, can't corner prey. They're survival experts, wolves. They know when to quit, when to find shelter and wait. It should be comforting, but Emma whispers, "What if they're not?" Your mother responds immediately. Then they're between us and the cold, same as we are. Everyone's fighting to survive tonight, sweetheart. The wolves, the rabbits, the birds, everything alive. And we're doing what we need to do. We're staying together, staying warm, staying smart. The howl, real or imagined, doesn't come again. Just the wind, always the wind, and the percussion of snow against canvas, and the creaking conversation of the wagon holding itself together in conditions it was never designed for. Time starts to behave strangely in the darkness. Minutes feel like hours, or maybe hours feel like minutes. There's no way to measure, no clock, no watch, no sun to track or shadows to read. Just the endless now of lying in the dark, listening to the storm, feeling the cold work its way deeper despite all your layers and preparations. Your father starts to speak his voice, cutting through the monotony of wind. "Tell me something," he says to no one and everyone. "Tell me about the warmest thing you can remember." It's a game, you realize, a tactical decision, using memory as a weapon against the cold, using words to create warmth that doesn't exist in physical space. Emma goes first, her voice small but steady. The kitchen in winter, when Mama was baking bread, the whole house smelled like it, and the stove made everything so warm you didn't even need a coat inside. Your mother makes a sound that's half sob, half laugh. "Oh, sweetheart." Yes, the bread oven. I can almost smell it now. The conversation continues, each person contributing their own memories of warmth. Summer afternoons swimming in the creek. The time you all went to the Independence Day celebration and stood too close to the bonfire. Christmas mornings by the fireplace. Small moments that seemed unremarkable when they were happening, but now in this cold darkness take on the quality of treasure, of proof that warmth exists, that it's real, that somewhere beyond this storm the world is still capable of comfort. And while you're talking, while you're building these verbal fires against the dark, the storm outside continues to build. The wind finds new pitches. The snow falls harder. The temperature drops further into ranges that would kill an exposed person in minutes. But inside, in this small defended space, you're still breathing, still talking, still human. The brass bell rings again, and you've already learned what it means. Still here, still standing, still alive, for now. Deep into the night, now past what must be 9 or 10 o'clock, though there's no way to verify, and your body is teaching you lessons your mind never learned in books. The first lesson is about heat distribution, about how your body makes terrible choices when it's fighting for survival. Your fingers and toes have gone from cold to numb to something beyond numb. You flex them experimentally and feel the delayed response, like they're connected to your brain by a very long wire with lag in the signal. Not quite part of you anymore. Theoretical appendages that you remember having but can't quite feel. This is deliberate, your learning. Your body is making strategic decisions about resource allocation. The blood that was warming your extremities has been pulled back, retreated to your core where it's needed most. Heart, lungs, liver, kidneys. The organs that actually keep you alive. They're getting priority. Your fingers might get frostbitten, might even be lost. But as long as your core temperature stays above a certain critical threshold, you'll live. Your body knows this, even if you don't. It's doing battlefield triage, sacrificing the outlying territories to protect the capital. Your mother understands this. She's been shifting Emma's position every 20 minutes or so, making sure the child's hands and feet stay in contact with warmth. Emma's small hands are tucked under your mother's arm, pressed against the warmth of her side. Emma's feet are against your back, and you can feel how cold they are, even through layers of stockings and blankets. But they're touching living warmth. They're being actively heated instead of passively cooling. You need to do the same. Your mother says, quietly speaking to you. Don't just lie still. Keep your blood moving. Flex your muscles. Not big movements, but steady work. You try it. Clench your toes inside your boots. Tighten your calf muscles. Hold, release. Tighten your stomach. Hold, release. It's exhausting, this invisible exercise, but you can feel the difference almost immediately. A small internal warmth being generated, not much, but something. Your muscles are little furnaces, and making them work makes them produce heat. Silas has been doing this all night, you realize. You can hear him sometimes in his corner, his breathing changing rhythm as he works through some sequence of muscle contractions. Creating warmth through effort, fighting the cold seduction of stillness. Because stillness is seductive. Every part of you wants to just be still, to conserve energy, to wait passively for morning. But stillness is also dangerous. Stillness is what happens right before hypothermia takes over completely. The body shuts down, not all at once, but in stages. And the first stage is this creeping paralysis, this overwhelming desire to just stop moving and rest. Talk to me, everyone, your father says suddenly. I need to hear your voices. Need to know you're all still alert. It's a check. He's monitoring consciousness, making sure no one is slipping into the dangerous twilight that precedes hypothermia's final stages. Emma responds first, her voice sleepy but present. I'm cold, Papa, but I'm awake. Good girl. Tell me about the chickens you're going to have in Oregon. What color will they be? Brown ones, and some white ones, and maybe one of those fancy ones with the feathers on their feet. She's describing chickens she's seen in someone's yard back in Missouri, birds that have taken on mythical status in her imagination. Your mother's turn. I'm here. I'm managing the moisture. The condensation is getting worse. And it is. You can feel it now. Every breath you exhale carries water vapor from your lungs. In this cold, that vapor doesn't stay gaseous for long. It condenses on the canvas overhead, on the wooden ribs on the surface of blankets. Tiny droplets forming joining, becoming larger drops that occasionally fall back down onto skin and fabric below. Your mother has been trying to manage this all night, turning blankets to expose dry sides, adjusting the arrangement to create air pockets, where moisture might collect away from bodies. But it's a losing battle. The laws of physics are absolute. Warm air holds moisture. Cold surfaces cause condensation. And in a sealed wagon with 4 people breathing, there's no way to prevent it completely. We'll be damp by morning, Silas confirms from his corner. Nothing to be done about it. Just part of the deal. But damp is still better than frozen solid, and frozen solid is better than exposed. We're managing. Your father responds to the earlier check-in. I'm awake, watching, counting breaths. Then he addresses you directly. Your turn. Tell me you're present. I'm here, you say, and your voice sounds strange in your own ears, hoarse from breathing cold, dry air, tired from hours of vigilance, but present, still here. Good, your father says. Now, everyone, we need to talk about the soapstones. You'd almost forgotten about them in the general misery of cold. But your father has been monitoring them, carefully rationing their warmth. The first one is dead, he announces, gone completely cold. The second is fading. I've got maybe another hour of useful heat from it. The third, the one I wrapped extra careful, that's our reserve for later if we need it. He's treating these rocks like precious fuel, which they are. Each minute of warmth they provide is a minute your bodies don't have to work as hard, don't have to burn as many calories, don't have to fight the cold alone. When the second stone dies, he continues. We're going to have to rely entirely on body heat and the blankets. That means closer contact. That means managing our breathing more carefully. That means staying alert to any signs of trouble. Your mother has pulled out food again, insisting everyone eats small amounts, even though no one feels hungry. Pieces of hardtack softened in the day's coffee water. Small bits of dried apple. A sliver of the precious honey that was supposed to last the whole journey. Calories are warmth. She explains using almost the exact words Silas used earlier. Your stomach is a furnace. Feed it. The food is difficult to eat. Your jaw is stiff from cold and clenching. Swallowing feels like work. But you force it down, understanding the logic, even if your body resists it. The digestion process itself generates heat. The fat and sugar break down in your gut and release energy that your body can use to maintain temperature. Emma is chewing slowly, methodically, her small jaws working with determination. She's being brave in ways that seem impossible for someone so young. Not complaining, not crying anymore, just enduring with a stoicism that makes your heart ache. The wind outside finds a new level, something that sounds less like wind and more like a living thing screaming. The whole wagon shudders with the force of it. The brass bell rings frantically. Snow is hitting the canvas with such force that it sounds like drumming, continuous and aggressive. This is the deepening, Silas says. The storm's heart. This is what I meant about it getting worse before it gets better. And he's right. You can feel it. The cold has found new ways in. little drafts that weren't there an hour ago. Places where the canvas has pulled slightly away from the frame, creating gaps that let the wind probe through. Your father can't do anything about them. In the dark, can't risk opening the wagon to make repairs, so you just have to endure them. These small invasions of Arctic air that find bare skin and steal heat with brutal efficiency. Your mother has pulled out the last reserve, a wool petticoat she was saving for Oregon, for civilization, for some imagined future where she'd need to look respectable again. Without ceremony, she drapes it over all your heads, creating a tent within a tent, a second layer of defense. The air inside this new enclosure is immediately warmer, your combined breath heating the small space. But you can already feel the moisture problem intensifying. Within minutes, the wool has developed tiny ice crystals on its underside, where your breath hits the cold fabric and freezes instantly. It's beautiful in a terrible way. Each crystal catching what little ambient light exists, creating a faint sparkle. But beauty is irrelevant. What matters is that moisture is turning to ice, and ice against skin conducts heat away faster than almost anything else. Your mother feels it with her fingers and makes a quiet sound of frustration. She adjusts the petticoat, turning the icy side up, away from faces, buying a few minutes before physics wins again. This is what survival looks like deep in the night. Not heroics, not dramatic action. Just this constant small management of competing necessities. Trying to stay warm while managing moisture. Trying to stay alert while conserving energy. Trying to keep everyone alive while the storm does its best to make that impossible. The second soapstone has gone cold now. Your father wraps it carefully and sets it aside, saving the third and final one for the deepest part of night, for the hours around 3 or 4 a.m., when human vitality is at its lowest ebb and the cold is at its worst. Without the stones, the cold becomes more immediate, more personal. You can feel it working through the layers, infiltrating despite all your preparations. Not a sudden cold, a patient cold. The kind that knows it has all night to win. Emma makes a small sound, and your mother responds immediately. What is it, sweetheart? I can't feel my toes anymore, Mama. She positions Emma's feet against her own stomach under her clothing, giving them direct contact with her body's core heat. It must be uncomfortable, those small ice-cold feet against warm skin, but your mother doesn't flinch. Just holds them there, rubbing them gently, willing warmth back into them. Better, she asks after a few minutes. A little bit, Emma admits. Good. We'll keep doing this. Every so often we check. We make sure everyone's extremities are still working. We don't let the cold take anything from us. It's a promise made with conviction, but you all know it might be an empty promise. Frostbite doesn't ask permission. If the cold is severe enough, if exposure lasts long enough, it takes what it wants, regardless of human will. But making the promise matters. Acting as if you have control matters. Because the alternative is giving up, and none of you are ready to do that. Not yet. Not while you're still breathing. Not while the brass bell is still ringing its small defiant message into the storm. Still here. Hours, into the darkness, in what must be close to midnight, you become intensely aware of the boundaries between bodies, or rather, the lack of boundaries. You're pressed against people in ways that would be unthinkable under normal circumstances. You're back against Emma's front. Emma's back against your mother's front. Your mother's back against your father's front. A chain of human contact so complete that you can feel each person's heartbeat, each breath, each small shift of position. This intimacy goes beyond anything you've experienced. You've shared space before, certainly. Months of travel in a covered wagon don't allow for much privacy. But this is different. This is contact born of pure necessity. Every inch of space between bodies is space where cold can gather. Every separation is a liability. So you press together with a completeness that erases the normal boundaries of self. And strangely, there's no embarrassment in it, no self-consciousness. The normal social rules that govern touch and proximity, they've been suspended by the simple mathematics of survival. When your hand accidentally brushes your mother's during a position adjustment, neither of you recoils. When Emma's elbow digs into your ribs, you simply shift slightly to accommodate it. When your father's arm comes over all of you, like a blanket made of flesh and bone, it's not awkward, it's essential. This is what humans did before we invented separation, before we built walls thick enough and heating systems efficient enough to let us pretend we're islands. This is the old way, the ancestral way, the way of caves and long houses, and any structure where survival required proximity. Silas has positioned himself in his own space, nearby, maintaining what small privacy the darkness allows. But he's close enough that you can hear his breathing, can sense his warmth contributing to the overall temperature of the enclosed space. He's alone, but not separate, part of the collective survival effort, even while maintaining his independence. Your mother is doing something with her hands under the blankets, and after a moment you realize she's redistributing heat deliberately. She's taken the warmer items, the ones that have been against her body's core, and is moving them to positions where they can warm Emma's feet and your hands, creating a circulation of warmth, making sure the heat generated by bodies gets distributed to the places that need it most. This is women's work, though no one would call it that aloud. This careful management of warmth and moisture and bodies. This constant vigilance over who needs what and when. Your mother learned it from her mother, who learned it from hers, stretching back through generations of women who kept families alive through winters that tried to kill them. Out here on the trail, the division is clear, even if it's never spoken. The men make decisions about routes and repairs, about when to stop and when to push on. But inside the wagon, in this intimate space of survival, your mother is the authority. She decides who lies where, who gets the extra blanket, which child needs attention first. It's a power that comes with terrible responsibility. Every choice she makes tonight could mean the difference between Emma waking up whole or waking up damaged. Between you keeping all your fingers or losing some to frostbite. The weight of it shows in her face, in the tightness around her eyes, in the way her hands never quite stop moving. And Emma, even at 9, is learning this language, learning what it means to be the one who endures cold so others can be warm. Learning that sometimes love looks like lying very still, even when everything hurts, because moving would disturb the careful arrangement that's keeping everyone alive. This is how girls become women on the frontier, not through ceremonies or celebrations, but through nights like this. Through the quiet understanding that their bodies, their warmth, their willingness to sacrifice comfort for others, these are the currencies of survival. This is how you survive in groups, she murmurs, speaking to no one in particular. You share, you circulate, you make sure the weak points get reinforced by the strong points. It's a lesson she's teaching without making it explicit. A knowledge that can't really be conveyed in words but has to be experienced. The understanding that survival is a collective effort. That what keeps you alive isn't your individual strength, but your willingness to be part of a system where everyone's contribution matters. Emma has her hands tucked under your coat now, against your chest, seeking warmth. They're small and cold, and the contact makes you want to pull away on instinct. But you don't. You hold still and let your body heat transfer to her fingers, feeling them slowly warm degree by degree. Thank you, she whispers so quietly you almost don't hear it. We take care of each other, you whisper back, and the words come out sounding more profound than you intended. But they're true. That's what's happening here. Not individual survival, but mutual care. Not every person for themselves, but everyone for everyone else. Your father shifts position carefully, trying to relieve some pressure point without disturbing the whole arrangement. The movement ripples through all of you like a wave. In the pressed together darkness, you're not four separate people anymore. You're one organism with multiple parts, and when one part moves, all parts feel it. Sorry, he mutters. It's fine, your mother replies. Everyone needs to adjust sometimes. Just do it slowly. Try to keep the warm air trapped. Because that's what this nest of blankets and bodies has become. A trap for warm air. The space between fabric and skin has been heated slightly by body temperature, and that warmed air is precious. Every time someone moves too quickly, some of it escapes, and you have to start over warming the new configuration. Silas speaks from his corner, his voice contemplative. You know what's strange? Being this close to people, but still feeling alone in your head. Out here in the dark with nothing to see and only touch and sound to go on, you end up very far inside yourself. Like your mind retreats inward when the outside world becomes too much. It's true, you realize, despite the physical intimacy, despite the shared space and shared breath and shared warmth, there's a part of you that's completely alone. A part that's experiencing this cold and this fear and this endurance in a way that can't be fully shared even with people pressed against you. That's the hardest part sometimes, Silas continues. Not the physical cold, that you can fight with blankets and layers and proximity, but the cold in your mind, the isolation that comes from knowing you're mortal and finite, and the universe doesn't particularly care if you make it or not. That's harder to manage. Your father makes a sound of agreement. I've been thinking about that, about how small we are, How easy it would be for the storm to just erase us, cover the wagon completely, and no one would know. Not for weeks or months. We'd just be gone. But we're not gone, your mother says firmly. We're right here. We're breathing. We're managing. And come morning, we're going to dig out and keep going. It's not just optimism. It's defiance. A refusal to give the cold and the dark and the isolation more power than they deserve. Yes, you're small. Yes, you're vulnerable. Yes, the universe is vast and indifferent. But you're also here alive fighting, and that counts for something. Emma's voice comes soft and uncertain out of the darkness. Are we going to die? The question hangs in the air like ice crystals. Your mother's response is immediate and definite. No, sweetheart, we're not going to die. We're cold and uncomfortable and scared, but we're prepared. We have shelter and blankets and each other. And that's enough. That's always been enough for people to survive worse storms than this. Promise. Emma pushes. Your mother hesitates for just a fraction of a second. And in that hesitation is all the honesty she can't speak aloud. The uncertainty. The awareness that promises made to weather and fate are promises you can't guarantee. But then she says firmly, I promise we're going to make it through, all of us together. The lie, if it is a lie, is told with such conviction that Emma relaxes slightly. Children need certainty, even when certainty isn't possible. They need adults to pretend the world is more controllable than it actually is. Your father's hand finds your mother's in the darkness, and you feel the movement through the pressed bodies, a squeeze of connection, a wordless communication. We're in this together. Whatever happens, we face it together. Time continues its strange distortion. Minutes that feel like hours. Hours that collapse into moments. The darkness unchanging. The cold relentless. The wind a constant presence that's become almost background noise. Though every so often, it finds a new pitch or a new strength that demands attention. The warmth you're generating collectively is barely adequate. It's not comfort. It's not pleasant, but it's keeping your core temperatures in viable ranges. It's preventing the slide into hypothermia. It's enough barely to maintain life, and in that barely enough space, you're learning something important. You're learning that survival isn't about thriving. It's not about being comfortable or happy, or even particularly functional. It's just about maintaining the basic conditions necessary for continuation. Keeping warm enough, staying alert enough, managing well enough. The bar is so much lower than you ever imagined, and meeting that low bar requires so much more effort than you ever understood. Emma's breathing has steadied into something approaching sleep, not deep sleep, not the kind of rest that actually restores, but a state of semi-consciousness where her exhausted brain has given up trying to process everything and just gone dormant for a while. Your mother is still awake. You can tell by the quality of her stillness. She's monitoring Emma's breathing, checking periodically for the dangerous signs. The cessation of shivering that means hypothermia is advancing. The confused speech that means mental function is compromised. The withdrawal that means the body is giving up the fight. But Emma seems okay. As okay as anyone can be in these circumstances. Still breathing regularly. Still responsive when prompted. Still holding on. Your father is awake too, you think, though it's hard to tell. His breathing is slow and steady, but there's a tension in his body that suggests conscious control rather than actual sleep. He's keeping watch, staying vigilant even while trying to rest. Silas might actually be asleep or something like it. His breathing has achieved a rhythm that suggests he's found some middle ground between fully alert and fully unconscious, a state where he can rest without surrendering to vulnerability. And you're somewhere in between, aware of the cold, aware of the discomfort, aware of the passage of time in its distorted, non-linear way, but also drifting sometimes into a place that isn't quite thought and isn't quite dream. A liminal space where your mind wanders while your body maintains its vigilance. The brass bell rings again as the wagon settles slightly, snow accumulating around it, changing its balance. The sound is familiar now, almost comforting. A reminder that you're still tethered to something real, something solid, even in the midst of the storm's chaos. Still here, still holding on, still breathing together in the dark, deep into what must be the small hours of morning. The night has taken on a quality that's almost hallucinatory. You're not sure anymore what's real and what's your mind creating patterns in the darkness and the cold. Time has become elastic, stretching and compressing in ways that make no sense. Have you been lying here for 6 hours or 16? Is it approaching dawn, or are you only halfway through? There's no way to know. The cold has penetrated everything now. It's not external anymore. It's inside you, cellular, like your very atoms have slowed down, lost their kinetic energy, approached some terrible stillness. You can feel it in your bones, in your joints, in the spaces between thoughts. Your teeth want to chatter constantly, but you've learned to control it, clenching your jaw against the reflex, because you know that the motion wastes energy, generates vibration that disturbs others, accomplishes nothing except making the cold feel more real. So you keep your jaw locked, and that creates its own kind of exhaustion muscles, working constantly to maintain tension. Emma has stopped shivering, and your mother noticed immediately. This is the dangerous sign everyone who knows cold understands to fear. Shivering is the body trying to generate heat through motion, through muscle contractions that create warmth as a byproduct. When shivering stops, it doesn't mean the body has warmed up. It means the body has moved past trying to warm itself. It means surrender is beginning at a physiological level. Your mother is working on Emma now with quiet urgency, rubbing the child's limbs through the blankets, creating friction heat, forcing blood to circulate to extremities, talking to her, constantly asking questions, demanding responses, anything to keep Emma conscious and engaged. Emma, sweetheart, tell me what color you want your room to be. In Oregon, in the house we're going to build. Emma's response is slurred thick with exhaustion and cold. Blue, like the sky. Yes, exactly. Sky blue. What else? What else will be in your room? Don't know. So tired. No, stay with me. Think about it. A bed, right? What kind of bed? What kind of quilt? It's not idle conversation. It's a tether, a reason to stay conscious, a reminder that there's a future beyond this night, beyond this cold, beyond this endless endurance. Your father has unwrapped the third and final soapstone, the one he's been saving for exactly this moment. The deepest part of night when human vitality reaches its lowest ebb. He places it carefully in Emma's hands, guiding her fingers to wrap around it through the protective burlap. Hold this, Emma. Feel the warmth. Focus on that warmth. Let it remind you that heat exists. That morning is coming. The stone is still warm, not hot like it was hours ago, but definitely warmer than the ambient air, warmer than Emma's hands, and you can see the child focus on it, her attention narrowing to just that sensation. Warmth, real physical warmth, proof that the cold hasn't won everything. Silas speaks from his corner, his voice rougher than before. This is the part, right here. This is what separates the ones who make it from the ones who don't. What do you mean? Your father asks. I mean, it's not the cold itself that kills most people. It's what happens in their heads. Something in their minds just decides it's too hard, too much, decides to give up, and once that decision gets made, the body follows pretty quick. He shifts position, and you can hear the stiffness in his movement, joints that don't want to work properly, muscles that have been fighting the cold for so many hours they're approaching failure. But I've also seen people survive conditions that should have killed them. Silas continues. Little children, old folks, people who had no right to still be breathing. And you know what the difference was. No one answers, but he continues anyway. They stayed mean. They stayed stubborn. They looked at that cold and that dark and that death and said, no, you don't get to have me. Not tonight. Not like this. They got angry at the situation, used that anger as fuel, burned it for warmth when they didn't have anything else to burn. There's a long pause. Then he adds quietly, so get mean if you need to. Get furious. Get stubborn as a Missouri mule. But don't get peaceful. Don't get accepting. Don't go gentle into that good night, as the poet says. Your father's lips have been moving for the past hour, you realize. Forming words in the darkness. Not random words. A pattern. A rhythm you recognize from childhood. The Lord is my shepherd. He whispers so quietly you can barely hear it. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. The 23rd Psalm, the one for death and danger, for when the valley feels very dark indeed. Your mother joins him, her voice a thread of sound. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. It's not the words themselves that matter, you think. It's the rhythm, the familiar cadence that's been spoken in dark places for thousands of years. A verbal talisman against the void. People have been saying these words in caves and ships, and besieged cities in all the desperate circumstances humans have ever faced, and somehow, impossibly, some of them survived. Maybe the words helped, maybe they didn't. But they gave people something to hold on to when there was nothing else. A structure, a pattern, a reminder that others had been this afraid before, and some of them made it through. Emma's voice joins the whisper child, high and uncertain. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And Silas from his corner completes it in his rough smoker's rasp. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The words weave between the wind sounds, mix with the creak of wood and the percussion of snow. And for these few moments, you're not just four people and an old man trying not to freeze. You're part of something older. A chain of voices reaching back through darkness, all saying the same thing. We're still here. We're still speaking. We're still choosing to hope even when hope seems foolish. When the psalm ends, the silence feels different. Still cold, still dangerous, but somehow less empty. Your mother makes a sound of fierce agreement. She's still working on Emma, still demanding engagement, still refusing to let the child slip into the dangerous passivity that precedes hypothermia's final stages. And Emma, bless her, is responding, fighting her way back to consciousness, gripping the soapstone, answering questions with increasing coherence. I want chickens, she says suddenly, her voice stronger. Brown ones and white ones, and I want to name them all. And every morning I'll collect the eggs and bring them to Mama for breakfast. Yes, your mother says, and there are tears in her voice. Yes, exactly. Every morning. I can see it now. It's a small victory, but in a night of endless small defeats, any victory matters enormously. Your father has started moving deliberately, making noise, creating activity. Everyone, we need to adjust positions, carefully, but we need to move, get blood flowing. Wake up the parts that have gone numb. It's agony at first. Joints that have been compressed for hours protest violently. Muscles that have been clenched against cold scream when asked to lengthen. Your feet, when you try to flex them, feel like wooden blocks attached to your ankles, not part of you. Foreign objects you're trying to control remotely, but you force it, making yourself shift position, flex fingers and toes, rotate ankles and wrists, circle your shoulders as much as the confined space allows, and slowly, painfully sensation returns. The burning, prickling feeling of circulation restoring itself, proof that nerves still work, that blood still flows, that the body is still capable of response and repair. Silas is moving too, and the sounds he makes suggest this is no easier for him, despite his years of experience. Getting old is hell, he mutters, but there's dark humor in it, a defiance, a refusal to let age, or cold, or exhaustion win without a fight. The wind outside has changed. You're not sure exactly when it happened, but the sound is different now. Less shrieking, less aggressive, still strong, still dangerous, but somehow more steady. Like the storm has exhausted its fury and settled into something more sustainable. The wind's dropping, your father says, confirming what you're sensing. Not gone, but lessening. Storms breaking up. Silas agrees. Could be we're past the worst of it. Could be it's just a lull before another wave. No way to tell from in here. But even the possibility of improvement is enough to change the atmosphere in the wagon. There's a subtle lightening of mood, a sense that maybe possibly the worst is behind you. That survival isn't just a desperate hope anymore, but an actual likelihood. Your mother has gotten Emma talking more steadily now. The child is describing in elaborate detail the garden she wants to plant, the vegetables and flowers, where each thing will go, how she'll water them every day, how she'll weed and hoe and harvest, plans for a future that suddenly seems reachable again. And while she's talking, while she's building these verbal gardens in Oregon's promised valleys, the cold continues its work. Still present, still dangerous, but somehow less absolute, less final. You think about the soapstone in Emma's hands, how its warmth came from fire, from combustion, from wood burning hours ago, and how that warmth has been slowly radiating out into the cold all night, fighting entropy, fighting the universe's tendency toward equilibrium. The stone is losing that fight, of course. Eventually, it will reach the same temperature as everything else. But not yet. Not while there's still some differential. Not while there's still some fight left. And isn't that what all of you are doing? Radiating warmth into the cold. Losing the fight against entropy, but losing slowly. Buying time, making the universe work for its victory. Refusing to surrender any faster than absolutely necessary. The brass bell rings again, softer now. The wagon has settled deep into the snow, probably drifted completely over on the windward side. But it's still upright, still intact, still providing the thin barrier between you and the storm. Still here. And that's enough. For now, that's enough. In the depth of cold, when your own survival feels questionable, there's strange comfort in remembering you're not the only living things out here fighting. The oxen, buck and bright, you can't see them, can't hear them over the wind most of the time, but you know they're out there, tied to the wagon, heads lowered against the storm, their massive bodies generating heat through simple bulk and the slow working of their complex digestive systems. Right now, in this moment, those two animals are processing hay, breaking down cellulose, fermenting grass in their four-chambered stomachs, and that digestive process is creating warmth. Real, measurable warmth that's keeping their body temperatures stable despite the Arctic conditions. They're better adapted for this than you are in some ways. That thick hide, all that mass, the ability to stand motionless for hours, conserving energy, waiting out conditions that would kill a more active animal. They won't panic like horses might, won't run, won't make things worse through fear. They'll just endure with the same patient stubbornness they've shown for 800 miles. But they're also vulnerable in ways that terrify your father. You can sense his worry even in the darkness. Every hour or so, He goes completely still, concentrating, trying to catch some sound that confirms they're still alive. Still capable of pulling this wagon the rest of the way to Oregon. Because without them, you're not travelers anymore. You're just people stranded in a wooden box in the middle of nowhere. They're fine, Silas says, reading your father's concerns somehow in the dark. Oxen are tougher than people. They've got that hide, all that mass. Takes a lot more cold to get through to them. And they'll stand all night if they have to. Won't wear themselves out fighting. They understand endurance better than we do. It's meant to be reassuring, but the worry doesn't leave your father's body. You can feel it in his tension, hear it in his breathing. And then, cutting through the wind, there's a sound that makes everyone alert. A low, rumbling bellow. Unmistakably bovine. Unmistakably alive. Your father makes a sound of pure relief. That's bright. That's definitely bright. Your father's hand finds the rope in the darkness. It's tied to his wrist, the other end secured to Buck's halter. A lifeline. A way to check on the animals without opening the wagon, without exposing himself to the killing cold. He pulls gently, once, twice, feeling for response through the hemp fiber. The rope tightens, then slackens, then tightens again as Buck shifts his weight, responding to the tug. A conversation without words. Are you there? Yes. Are you alive? Yes. Can you endure? We're trying. The rope carries information your father reads like a language. The tension tells him Buck is standing, not collapsed. The rhythm of movement suggests the ox is shifting from foot to foot, the way cattle do when they're cold but managing. When an animal stops moving, stops trying to stay warm, that's when you know you're losing them. Still on their feet, your father reports quietly. Both of them. You can hear it now, listening for it. Not just the occasional bellow, but smaller sounds. The shuffle of hooves in snow. The snort of breath clearing nostrils. The creak of leather harness. Each sound a small affirmation. Life persisting. Animals doing what animals do, enduring without complaint. Without the psychological burden of knowing how bad it could get, just existing moment to moment through the cold. There's another smell when the wind shifts, finding its way through some gap in the canvas. Sharp, organic, the unmistakable scent of cattle, manure and wet hide, and the sour, sweet smell of ruminant digestion. Under normal circumstances, you'd wrinkle your nose. But tonight, that smell is weirdly comforting. It means the oxen's bodies are still functioning, still processing, still generating the heat that comes from breaking down hay into energy. The ox's complaint, whatever prompted it, carries through the storm. A sound so ordinary, so normal, that it becomes extraordinary in this context. That bellow means conscious, alert, still fighting. And if the animals can survive out there, fully exposed to the elements, then surely you can survive in here with your blankets and your shared warmth and your canvas shelter. Your mother speaks quietly. I'll save the good hay for them tomorrow, after we dig out. They've earned it. It's a small thing, a promise to animals who won't understand the gesture as gratitude, but it matters. It's a way of acknowledging partnership, a way of saying, We're in this together, human and beast, and we take care of our own. Emma, more alert now with the soapstone warming her hands, asks in a small voice, "Will they be cold, like we are?" "Yes," your mother answers honestly, "but they're strong, and they're together, and they'll make it through just like we will." The truth is that the oxen might well be more comfortable than you are right now. Their metabolism generates significant heat. Their hide provides better insulation than your layers of cotton and wool. They don't experience cold the same way you do, don't have the same psychological component of suffering. But they're still alive out there in conditions that are actively trying to kill. Still maintaining body temperature against the storm's assault. Still part of this collective survival effort, even though they can't understand it in human terms. You think about the chain of partnership that got you here. Those oxen eating grass all summer, building up the fat and muscle that's keeping them alive tonight. The grass growing in spring rain and summer sun. The whole interconnected system of life that makes migration possible. And it goes deeper than that. The oxen were bred by someone, raised by someone, trained by someone to accept the yoke and pull loads and respond to commands. Generations of cattle selected for strength and docility and endurance. Humans and cattle co-evolving for thousands of years until each species shaped the other. Your father bought Buck and Bright from a farmer in Missouri who'd raised them from calves, spent weeks training with them, learning their temperaments, understanding how they communicate through ear position and tail movement and the subtle sounds they make. That knowledge, that relationship, it's what allows him to interpret that bellow in the darkness. To know it came from Bright, not Buck. To understand it as a sign of life rather than a cry of distress. They saved us once already. Your father says quietly, apparently following a similar train of thought. Remember the river crossing back in Kansas. You remember? The current had been stronger than expected. The wagon had started to drift, and Buck had simply refused to let it. Had planted his hooves and pulled with strength that seemed impossible even for an animal that size. Had kept the wagon from being swept downstream and smashed against rocks. We'd be dead without them, your father continues. Not here, not trying to make it through this storm, just dead. Back in Kansas, drowned in a river whose name we don't even know. It's true. Your survival has always been a partnership. Not just between humans, but between species. You provide direction and care. They provide strength and endurance. Neither could make this journey alone. Silas speaks from his corner. I've known people who treated their stock better than their families. Knew a man once fed his mules before he fed his own children. Everyone thought he was crazy, but he wasn't. He understood priority. Those mules were what kept his children alive. They got fed first because without them, nobody ate at all. There's a pause. Then he adds, out here, the line between human and animal gets thinner. We're all just trying to make it through. All just fighting the same cold. All just hoping to see another morning. The wind gusts again, hard enough to make the wagon rock, and you hear something new. A snuffling sound. closer than the oxen should be. Your father tenses immediately, hand moving toward the rifle. But Silas chuckles. That's just them shifting position, moving to put the wagon between themselves and the wind. Smart creatures. They're using us as a windbreak, same as we're depending on them to get us to Oregon. It's a moment of perfect mutualism. The wagon that the oxen pulled all day is now providing them with shelter, and tomorrow they'll pull it again. Partnership made visible in the most basic terms. Survival depending on cooperation. Emma asks another question. Do they know we're here, inside? Do they know we're trying to stay warm too? Your mother considers this carefully before answering. I don't know what they understand, sweetheart, but I think they know we're together, that we're a group, that what happens to us happens to them too. It's as good an answer as any. Maybe the oxen do have some sense of collective fate. Maybe they understand in whatever way their minds work that the humans in the wagon are the same humans who feed and water them. That your survival is connected to theirs. Or maybe they're just animals operating on instinct, doing what animals do when it's cold. Find shelter, conserve energy, wait for better conditions. But either way, knowing they're out there helps. Knowing you're not the only living things fighting this night. Knowing that if those massive patient creatures are still breathing, still standing, then maybe you can be too. The storm continues. The cold persists, but you're not alone in enduring it. And somehow, that makes it more bearable. There's a state you slip into sometime after midnight, a liminal space that isn't quite sleep and isn't quite wakefulness. Your mind starts to wander in strange directions, unmoored from the usual constraints of conscious thought. Memories mix with half-dreams, mix with the immediate sensory reality of wool and cold and breathing. You're simultaneously lying in this wagon and walking through the farm back in Ohio and standing at the edge of the Pacific Ocean you've never seen but have been promised for months now. Time does weird things here. Minutes stretch into hours or collapse into seconds. You can't tell if you've been lying in this position for 20 minutes or 2 hours. The darkness is absolute and unchanging, offering no markers, no way to measure progression, except the slow progression of cold through your body. Emma is definitely sleeping now, her breath slow and even. Your mother is awake. You can tell by the quality of her stillness, the tension that never quite leaves her, even when she's trying to rest. She's listening, always listening, for changes in breathing that might signal trouble, for sounds that shouldn't be there, for the absence of sounds that should be. Your father shifts slightly, and you feel the movement ripple through the whole nest of blankets and bodies. He's trying to adjust position without disturbing anyone, an impossible task in this pressed-together space. But he's doing his best. His hand comes to rest on your shoulder briefly, a touch that communicates, I'm here, I'm watching, you can let go a little. Can you, though? That's the question that circles through your drifting thoughts. Can you actually sleep? When sleeping might mean surrendering to cold. When the body's natural response to sleep is to lower its temperature, conserve energy, Slow everything down. When slowing down might be exactly the wrong thing to do. Silas seems to have found some middle ground. You can hear him breathing in his corner, not snoring exactly, but making small sounds that suggest he's achieved some form of rest. How many times has he done this? How many winter nights has he survived to become this person who can sleep or something like it while the storm tries to tear the wagon apart? You try to follow his example. Let your breath slow deliberately. Let your muscles relax incrementally, not surrendering to sleep, but negotiating with it. Agreeing to rest while maintaining some core of awareness that can pull you back if necessary. And in that state, that strange half place, you find yourself thinking about all the other people who've done this. Not just on the Oregon Trail, but throughout all of human history. Every person who ever sheltered from a storm, every family that huddled together through a long winter night, every civilization that learned to survive in places that didn't want them to survive. You're part of a lineage, an inheritance of endurance. The knowledge of how to do this wasn't written down in instruction manuals. It was passed down through bodies, through experience, through the simple fact of ancestors who lasted long enough to have children who could pass it on again. Your great-grandmother, who you never met, she survived winters in Pennsylvania that were probably worse than this. Your grandfather, who died before you were born, he knew cold. He knew hunger. He knew the exhaustion of endless work and the fear of crop failure and the arithmetic of rationing food to make it last until spring. They made it through. That's what their survival means. That's what it gave you. Not just genes, but knowledge encoded in culture and practice, in the stories they told around fires about hard winters and close calls. The fact that you exist means every single one of your ancestors, stretching back thousands of generations, survived long enough to reproduce. Every one of them made it through their own version of this night. Your grandmother used to tell stories about winter. Not the cheerful ones about snow angels and hot cocoa, but the old stories, the true ones, about the winter of 1816, the year without summer when snow fell in July and crops failed across the northern states. About families that ran out of food by February and had to make choices no one should have to make. She never said it directly, but you understood some of those families didn't all survive. Some made it through by deciding who would eat and who wouldn't, who would get the warmth and who would go without. The stories were meant as warnings, you think now. Not to scare children, but to teach them. To pass down the knowledge that survival sometimes requires hard choices. That sentiment is a luxury you can't always afford. That loving someone might mean letting them go so others can live. You wonder if your mother is thinking about those stories now, if she's already made calculations in her head about what she'd do if it came to that. Which child would she choose if she could only save one? Or would she give everything to both and die herself? You don't want to know the answer, don't want to think about it. But the cold makes you think about everything, strips away all the comfortable illusions, leaves only the bare mechanics of staying alive. Emma makes a small sound in her sleep, and your mother responds immediately with a gentle touch, a whispered word. The gesture is automatic, practiced through years of motherhood requiring no conscious thought. And someday, Emma might do this for her own children, might lie awake in some future darkness, keeping watch, keeping vigil, keeping everyone alive through simple presence and attention. The chain continues, the lineage of survival, each generation learning from the last and teaching the next, until eventually maybe your descendants will have it easier, will have better shelter and better heat and better ways to protect themselves from weather that wants to kill them. But tonight, right now, you're learning it the hard way, in your body, in your bones, learning what cold really means, what endurance actually costs, what it takes to stay alive when the universe doesn't particularly care if you do. Your father is praying you realize. His lips moving slightly, forming words too quiet to hear. Not asking for rescue, not demanding divine intervention, just acknowledging, bearing witness, saying we're here, we're trying, we're doing everything we know how to do. Faith and works. The preachers say, you have to do both. The works are lying here, managing the cold, staying alert, making constant adjustments. The faith is believing that it matters, that effort makes a difference, that the universe, despite its apparent indifference, might still have some room for human will to affect outcomes. The wind has definitely lessened. You're sure of it now. Not stopped, not even what you'd call calm. But the edge has come off it. The shrieking has become something more manageable. The assault has settled into something you might actually survive. And with that realization comes a subtle shift in your state of mind. You're not just enduring anymore. You're actually believing you might make it through. The night, which seemed endless an hour ago, now feels finite, survivable, something with a beginning, middle, and end. And you're somewhere past the middle, now heading toward the end. This shift is dangerous in its own way. The temptation to relax too soon, to let your guard down before the threat has actually passed. But it's also necessary. You can't maintain maximum vigilance forever. At some point, you have to start believing survival is possible, or you'll exhaust yourself fighting a battle you've already won. So you let yourself relax just slightly, not surrendering, but acknowledging progress. The cold is still terrible. The discomfort is still intense. But you're still breathing, still conscious, still here. And that's starting to feel like enough. The brass bell rings softly as the wagon settles a little more into the snow. But the sound is different now. Not frantic, not warning of imminent danger, just a quiet reminder. Still here, still holding, still waiting for dawn. There comes a moment, maybe around 3 or 4 in the morning, when human vitality reaches its absolute lowest point. This is the hour when hospitals see the most deaths, when bodies that have been fighting illness or injury finally give up the struggle, when the life force, whatever that is, reaches its minimum ebb, and the question of continuation becomes almost a coin flip. You can feel it happening, not dramatically, not with warning bells or clear signals, just a subtle but profound weakening, a sense that your body is running out of whatever reserves it's been burning, that the fuel tank is approaching empty, that systems are beginning to think about shutting down. Your hands and feet, which went numb hours ago, have moved past numb into something else. You can't feel them at all anymore. They're theoretical concepts you remember having, but can't connect to your current physical reality. When you try to flex your toes, you're not even sure if they're responding. The signal goes out from your brain, but whether it arrives at its destination is anyone's guess. This is dangerous. You know it's dangerous. Frostbite happens when tissue actually freezes ice crystals, forming in cells, rupturing them from within. By the time you feel pain again, if you feel pain again, the damage might already be permanent. But there's nothing you can do about it. You've used every technique you know, every layer you have, every source of warmth available, and it's not enough. It's keeping you alive barely, but it's not enough to protect everything. Your mother understands this too. She's making triage decisions in the darkness, protecting Emma's core temperature and extremities at the expense of her own comfort. You can feel her hands working constantly, rubbing the child's feet, keeping circulation going, sacrificing her own warmth to maintain Emma's. Your father has gone very quiet, not sleeping. You can tell by his breathing, but not talking either. Conserving energy, focusing inward on the work of staying alive. Each breath a considered act, each heartbeat a small victory. And then, just when the darkness feels absolute and eternal and unchanging, something shifts. It's subtle. So subtle you think you're imagining it at first. But the darkness inside the wagon has changed quality. Not lighter exactly, but less absolutely black. A gradual graduation from complete darkness to something that admits the possibility of light existing somewhere, somewhen. You can't see anything yet, can't make out shapes or forms, but your eyes, which have been functioning in pure darkness for hours, detect some minute change in the amount of photons reaching them. Some hint that somewhere beyond the canvas and the storm, the sun is beginning its climb back above the horizon. Your father notices too. He goes completely still, focusing all his attention on this subtle change, testing it, trying to determine if it's real or imagined. Is it? He starts to say. Yes, Silas confirms from his corner. That's morning starting. Still a ways off from actual dawn, but the pre-dawn, the beginning of the end. The relief is enormous, but no one celebrates. You're all too deep in exhaustion, too focused on immediate survival to think about what comes next. But knowing the night is finite, that it has a boundary you're approaching, that changes everything. Emma wakes with a small cry pulled from sleep by some internal sense that something has shifted. Mama. I'm here, sweetheart. It's almost morning. We made it through. My feet hurt, Emma says, and your mother makes a sound that's half laugh, half sob. That's good, baby. That's really good. Pain means they're still alive, still fighting. We're going to take care of them, I promise. Aye, but your mother is already thinking ahead to what comes after the pain, to the days and weeks that follow this night. because surviving isn't the same as escaping unharmed. She's seen it before in stories passed down from earlier emigrant trains. The woman who lost 3 toes to frostbite and walked the rest of the way to Oregon with a limp that never healed. The child who developed pneumonia from sleeping in damp clothes and died 2 weeks after the storm passed, lungs filled with fluid. The man whose fingers turned black and had to be amputated with a sore and whiskey infection setting in anyway. The cold doesn't always kill you outright. Sometimes it damages you, slowly sets in motion failures that take days or weeks to manifest. Tissue that seemed fine at first, then darkened, then died. Lungs weakened by breathing icy air for hours, vulnerable now to any infection. Joints that ached forever after arthritis settling into bones that got too cold too young. This night will leave marks, maybe not visible ones, maybe nothing that shows on the surface. But in the depths of winter, 20 years from now, Emma might wake with aching feet and remember. Your mother's hands might stiffen in cold weather joints, remembering the work they did tonight. Your father might develop a cough that never quite goes away, legacy of breathing frozen air while digging through snow. The body keeps score, remembers trauma, even when the mind wants to forget. Tonight is buying your survival, but the price might be paid over a lifetime in small currencies of pain. Still, you're alive to pay it, and that's worth something. The pain Emma is describing is the agony of circulation returning to tissue that's been too cold for too long. It's a good sign physiologically. It means no permanent damage, no frostbite beyond maybe the most superficial kind. But it hurts in ways that are hard to endure. Your mother pulls out the last of the dried apple, the pieces she's been saving for exactly this moment. Here, eat this. Give your body something to work with. We're going to need energy soon. Because mourning doesn't mean the danger is over. Mourning means a whole new set of challenges. Digging out from under snow that might be 3 or 4 feet deep. Checking the oxen. Assessing damage to the wagon. Trying to get a fire started with wood that's been exposed to the storm all night. Figuring out if you can even continue the journey, or if you're stuck here until the snow melts. But those are daylight problems. Warm problems, relatively speaking. They seem almost manageable compared to the night you've just endured. Your father is moving now, carefully extracting himself from the tangle of bodies. I'm going to check outside, just a quick look, see what we're dealing with. He makes his way to the back of the wagon, moving with obvious stiffness. Hours of immobility have left everyone's joints, frozen muscles tight. Every movement is effort. When he opens the canvas flap, the light that comes in is grey and thin. But after the complete darkness, it's almost blinding. You have to close your eyes against it, let them adjust gradually. And with the light comes cold, real cold. The kind that makes the inside of the wagon, which felt brutally cold all night, suddenly seem almost warm by comparison. Your father stands there for a long moment, just looking. His breath comes out in great white plumes. His shoulders are set in a way that suggests he's seeing something difficult. Finally, there's a lot of snow. A lot. can't see the wheels, can't see much of anything except white. He closes the opening, quickly tying it back, but the damage is done. The cold has found a new way in infiltrating the small warmth you've carefully maintained all night. But there's also relief. Profound relief. You can see each other now, at least dimly. Can see the grey light filtering through canvas. Can see Emma's pale face, your mother's exhausted eyes, your father's frost-rimed beard. You survived. The night didn't kill you. You made it to morning. The darkness doesn't lift all at once. It leaks away grudgingly, like something that doesn't want to leave. First comes the grey. Not the clean grey of a cloudy day, but a dingy, uncertain grey that seems to carry darkness within it, even while admitting light. You can make out shapes now. The hump of supply crates, the curve of the canvas overhead, the huddled forms of your family revealed after hours of being only touch and sound and shared warmth. Your mother looks terrible. You've never seen her look this worn. Her face is pale as paper, her eyes sunken, her mouth tight with exhaustion. But she's moving with purpose, checking Emma thoroughly, examining the child's hands and feet for signs of frostbite, assessing colour and temperature and response. Emma's feet are red and swollen looking, but the skin is intact. No blackening, no ice crystal damage, just the inflammation of tissue that got too cold but not quite cold enough to die. Your mother wraps them carefully in the driest cloth she can find, then tucks them under her own clothing against her body's core warmth. Your father is preparing to go outside, layering up, wrapping cloth around his face, getting ready to face whatever the storm has left behind. "I'll go with you," Silas says, already moving despite his obvious stiffness. Two sets of eyes, two sets of hands. We'll work faster together. They exchange a look that carries volumes of communication. Two men who've come through something terrible together, who trust each other with survival, who understand without words what needs to happen next. When they open the canvas and climb out, the cold that rushes in is vicious, aggressive, angry, almost as if the storm resents being survived. You can see your breath forming ice crystals before it even dissipates. The temperature hasn't risen with the coming of light. If anything, it might have dropped further. The clear air after the storm carrying a cold that's even more pure, more absolute. And then they're gone outside in the white world, and you're left in the wagon with your mother and Emma, listening to the sounds of digging, shovels hitting frozen snow, grunts of effort. The occasional muttered curse when the cold makes fingers clumsy or the snow proves more difficult than expected. Your mother starts organizing the interior, making ready for the next phase, finding the coffee and the pot, locating the tinderbox, and checking whether the matches inside survived the night's moisture, planning the first meal, the first warm food, in however many hours it's been. Emma is sitting up now, wrapped in every available blanket like a small fabric cocoon. Her colour is better, her eyes more alert. She's going to be okay, you think, going to recover from this night and carry forward into whatever comes next. "Mama," she says quietly, "I was really scared. I know, sweetheart, I was scared too. But we made it. Yes, we made it. We did exactly what we needed to do, and we made it through. It's a lesson that will stay with Emma for life, you think. The knowledge that fear doesn't have to mean failure, that being scared and being capable can exist simultaneously. That survival sometimes looks like just lying still in the dark and refusing to quit. Outside, there's a sound of triumph. "They're alive!" your father shouts. "Both of them, Buck and Bright, are all right." The relief is enormous. The oxen survived. The wagon can move again. The journey can continue. Slowly, with much effort and many setbacks, the men work to clear enough space to assess the full situation. The snow has drifted in ways that are both helpful and harmful. The windward side of the wagon is buried under 3 or 4 feet. The leeward side has been scoured almost clean. The wagon itself has settled deep, probably 6 inches lower than where it started, pressed down by the weight of accumulated snow on the canvas top. But the structure held. The canvas didn't tear. The frame didn't collapse. The wheels, once they're dug out, should still turn. Eventually, miraculously, your father gets a fire started. It takes forever. Multiple attempts with precious matches. Careful arrangement of dried grass from under the wagon seat. Bark shavings carried from 3 states ago. Small twigs that might be dry enough to catch. And finally, a tiny flame. Orange and fragile and utterly beautiful. Your mother has coffee water heating before the fire is even properly established. She holds the pot over the small flame with shaking hands, willing it to heat to boil, to transform water into the dark magic of coffee that will signal the true end of the ordeal. The smell when the coffee finally brews is redemption itself, bitter and dark and alive with promise. It cuts through the smell of cold and fear and exhaustion. It says civilization still exists. Comfort is still possible. Normal life, however far away, is still real. She pours small amounts into tin cups, hands them around. The metal is hot enough to hurt your cold hands, but you don't let go. You breathe in the steam, let it warm your face, then finally sip. The coffee tastes like survival, like morning, like all the mornings you'll have now because you made it through the night. Your father is checking the wagon, systematically looking for damage. The canvas has a few tears that can be patched. The wooden frame has some new cracks that will need to be monitored. But overall, remarkably, everything essential is intact. Silas is tending the fire, feeding it carefully, building it up to something that can actually warm as well as simply exist. His hands are moving slowly, stiffly, and you can see the toll the night took on him. But he's smiling slightly, a grim satisfaction in having survived another test, in having outlasted the storm through nothing more complex than stubborn refusal to die. Emma is eating a piece of hardtack that your mother softened in the coffee, chewing slowly, returning to herself bit by bit. The trauma of the night will stay with her certainly, will become one of those formative memories that shapes how she sees the world. But she'll be okay. You'll all be okay. The sun hasn't broken through the clouds yet, but the light is strengthening. You can see the landscape now revealed in shades of white and grey. Snow everywhere. Endless snow. Drifts that have created entirely new geography hills, where there were none valleys sculpted by wind, a world transformed overnight. And somewhere in that white expanse, the trail continues. The path to Oregon. The journey that's not finished despite everything you've endured. Your father comes back to the wagon carrying something in his arms. Snow, you realize. Clean snow from a drift that hasn't been contaminated by ash or dirt or animal waste. He'll melt it for water, for drinking, for cooking, for washing faces that haven't been truly clean in months. The day ahead will be hard. Traveling through this much new snow will be slow and exhausting. The oxen will struggle. The wagon will stick and slide. Every mile will cost more effort than usual, but there'll be daylight miles, visible miles, miles where you can see where you're going and measure progress and know that at the end of the day there will be another fire, another meal, another chance to rest. The night is over. The storm has passed. You survived. So, here we are, morning, light, coffee and survival, and the prospect of continuation. I want you to think about that night for a moment. Not just the cold, though we've certainly talked enough about the cold, but what it meant, what it taught, what it revealed about the human capacity for endurance. Those pioneers, they didn't survive because they were braver than you. They weren't stronger than you. They weren't better or more capable or specially gifted. They survived because they did what needed to be done, hour after hour, without knowing if it would be enough. They managed their attention. They managed their energy. They managed their expectations about what survival would feel like. They learned that getting through hard things doesn't require heroism. It requires persistence. It requires the ability to make small adjustments constantly. It requires the willingness to keep going, even when every instinct screams to give up. And here's what strikes me most about their story that night in the wagon. It wasn't a singular event for many of them. It was one of dozens of hard nights on a journey that took months. Each night required the same vigilance, the same effort, the same refusal to surrender. The endurance wasn't a moment. It was a practice, a discipline, a way of being that had to be maintained over and over and over. That's what real endurance means. Not one heroic moment, but consistent, unglamorous persistence. Getting through, making it to morning, doing it again tomorrow. And the thing is, they didn't have what you have. They didn't have weather forecasts warning them about storms. They didn't have emergency services that could rescue them if things went wrong. They didn't have GPS or satellite phones or any way to call for help. They had only themselves, their supplies, their knowledge, and their refusal to quit. And it was enough. Barely, but enough. You're lying somewhere comfortable right now, I hope. Somewhere warm and safe and dry. You have heating and walls and probably more blankets than you need. You have technology that would seem like magic to those pioneers. You have the luxury of choosing to listen to this story rather than living it. But maybe like me, you'll find that knowing about that night in the wagon changes something. Makes you grateful in a way you weren't before. Makes you understand that the comfort you have isn't natural or automatic. It's the result of thousands of years of humans figuring out how to survive winter. how to create warmth, how to build structures that keep the cold at bay. Those people in the wagon, they're your ancestors in spirit, if not in blood. Their survival and the survival of millions, like them who endured similar nights, made this possible. This moment, this comfort, this choice. You have to listen or drift off to sleep to be warm and safe and alive. As you settle into your own rest tonight, I want you to do something. Feel the warmth around you. Notice it actively. The temperature of the air, the softness of your bedding, the walls that keep weather at a distance. And just for a moment, feel gratitude for it. Not guilty gratitude, not I should be more thankful obligation. Just simple appreciation for the miracle of being warm when you could be cold. Because that's what it is, you know, a miracle. Not in the supernatural sense, but in the sense that it required countless generations of human ingenuity and effort to create a world where you can sleep in warmth while a storm rages outside. And maybe let their persistence inspire your own. Whatever cold you're facing, metaphorical or literal, remember that survival is possible. That morning comes. That endurance, quiet and unglamorous as it is, can be enough. I want to know where you are right now. What time is it there? Are you in bed or somewhere else? Are you warm? I love knowing that these stories reach people in all different places, at all different times of day or night. It creates this strange connection across space and time, all of us thinking about the same moment in history, the same struggle for survival. If you're enjoying these journeys into the past, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe to this channel. There are more stories waiting, more nights to survive, more experiences to understand more humanity, to witness in its struggle and its triumph, more lessons about endurance and persistence, and the strange, beautiful stubbornness of people who refuse to quit. Leave a comment if you'd like. Tell me what you thought. Tell me if you've ever been truly cold, if you've ever endured something that felt endless, if this helped you understand something you didn't before. Tell me what comfort means to you now after spending this night with me in imagination. I read every comment and they help me know what stories matter, what experiences to explore next. But for now, let's part ways here. You've spent the night with me in a covered wagon. You've lived through a blizzard. You've learned what survival feels like when it's measured in breaths and heartbeats, and the small warmth of bodies pressed together in the dark. That's enough for one night. More than enough. Whatever warmth you have right now, whatever comfort surrounds you, I hope you notice it, appreciate it. Let it sink in with the kind of gratitude that comes from knowing, truly, knowing what it's like when warmth is scarce and survival is uncertain. And if you dream of snow and storms and the long wait for dawn, well, that's all right too. Sometimes the cold needs to be remembered so that warmth means more. Sometimes we need to visit the hard places so we can appreciate the soft ones. Sleep well, my friend. Sleep warm and safe and easy. And remember that you, like those pioneers, like all humans throughout history, have more capacity for endurance than you know, more strength than you give yourself credit for. more ability to persist through darkness than you imagine. Because if they could make it through that night in a wooden box on wheels with nothing but blankets and determination and each other, then you can make it through whatever you're facing, one breath at a time, 1 hour at a time, one small act of persistence after another, until the darkness finally breaks and the light returns, and you discover once again that you're still here, still breathing, still alive. Until next time, this is Peter Miller, grateful for your company on another journey through history. Good night.